Hey everybody, welcome to That's Good Broncos. I am Brandon Perna. Today, we've got the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Denver Broncos prediction episode. I'm previewing each positional group, battling against each other, awarding the winner a point based on my NFL expertise, which is expert. It's one and done because the playoffs have arrived. Let's do this. That's good, Broncos. Due to the weird series of events that occurred in Week 17 of the NFL regular season, the Broncos earned home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Last weekend, every single wild card road team won, and we've seen several wild card teams battle their way to the Super Bowl on the road like the 1997 Denver Broncos, but this week, I'm giving Denver a half point for home field advantage. And Broncos fans, you better warm those voice boxes with some hot tea, honey, and a drop of horse semen to make sure that stadium at Mile High is deafening. Gary Kubiak versus Mike Tomlin and the Dirty Coordinators. You know who I'm talking about, Munchak, you hair-pulling son of a bitch. Mike Tomlin is 6-4 in the postseason with the Super Bowl ring, and Gary Kubiak is 0-2 as a playoff head coach. Tomlin inherited a much better team than Kubiak did when he took over coaching the Houston Texans. But I believe, until proven otherwise, Tomlin is the better coach. Gary Kubiak has, in my opinion, shown questionable judgment in player evaluation. It took him way too long to pull Michael Schofield at right tackle. Evan Mathis' role has declined despite outperforming everyone else on the line, and Virgil Green's absence from the passing game is a mystery. Now, we will see if Kubiak can do what former players say he does very well, and that's inspire his guys to run through walls for him. Tomlin's record gets him the half point. Peyton Manning versus Ben Roethlisberger. Damn, that feels good to say. Peyton Manning will return to the field as the starter in one of the biggest games of his career. Manning reportedly had a very good week of practice. He looked accurate, moved well, and single-handedly shut down Al Jazeera America. Ben Roethlisberger, in case you didn't know, has some significant shoulder problems. If he were healthy, I'd definitely give him the advantage due to everything he's done this season, including playing through serious injuries, but none of them were to his throwing shoulder. He'll be able to deal with the pain because we all know
pain don't hurt.
But his accuracy and his arm strength will be greatly affected. The mechanics of his
Do you enjoy pain?
Pain don't hurt.
shoulder will be different with this injury. This is literally the worst place to be injured for a quarterback. I'm going with brain over brutalized brawn in this matchup, giving PFM a .25 advantage. And if Landry Jones has to finish the game for the Steelers, well, we all know how good a guy named Landry is at football. Running backs versus running backs. The injuries for the Steelers are really piling up. DeAngelo Williams, who did a hell of a job filling in for Le'Veon Bell all season long, is out with a foot injury. That leaves the best named running back in the NFL, Fitzgerald Toussaint, and Jordan Todman to carry the load. Todman looked good against the Bengals as a change of pace back, and his speed could be an issue for the Broncos. Toussaint performed admirably as the main power-type back with 58 yards on 17 carries. Look for these guys to get a heavy workload on Sunday. For Denver, the blueprint has been drawn up. When C.J. Anderson and Ronnie Hillman run well, the Broncos win football games. We saw Peyton Manning commit heavily to the run against San Diego, and I think if he remembers that, this team will thrive on offense. The Steelers will be a big test for the backs because the last time they played, Pittsburgh limited Hillman and Anderson to 62 total yards. If the Broncos can run the ball down the throats of the Steelers, they have a good chance to not only win that game, but the Super Bowl. In order of the best teams against the run, right now they are Seattle at 1, Carolina at 4, Pittsburgh at 5, Arizona at 6, Kansas City at 8, and New England at 9. This game is a tone setter for Denver, and I'll roll with Anderson and Hillman's experience over Pittsburgh's backs. .25 for the Broncos. Denver Broncos wide receivers and tight ends versus Pittsburgh's secondary. Emmanuel Sanders had his most productive game of the season against Pittsburgh earlier in December with 10 catches, 181 yards, and a touchdown. Since that game, the Steelers secondary has tightened up. The back-end boys, as they like to be called, gave up 212 passing yards to the Bengals, 240 to the Browns, and 274 to the Ravens. More impressively, this defense as a whole has only given up 16 points per game over the last 3 games. William Gay's 2 interceptions have come during the span of the last 5 games. Brandon Boykin has really emerged as a dominant nickel/slot corner, and the safeties, Mike Mitchell and Will Allen, are gamers. The secondary is not nearly as bad as it was early in the year. The Broncos receivers and tight ends must not underestimate this defensive group. Demaryius Thomas should have a big game, as he has a great size advantage over Pittsburgh's corners. Sanders has shown what he can do, but I'll be looking for that third wide receiver, either Benny Fowler, Jordan Norwood, or Andre Caldwell, to work the middle of the field, along with Virgil Green, who I believe will see more catches with Manning back behind center. The Broncos get a 2.5 advantage because we all know their biggest demon tends to be themselves. Broncos offensive line versus Steelers front 7. The good news is the Broncos offensive line looked better when Tyler Columbus took over at right tackle against the Chargers for Michael Schofield. Kubiak has said both Columbus and Schofield will play during the game, but Jesus God, football overlord, I pray Columbus gets more snaps. And I also hope Evan Mathis resumes his starting role. Regardless, these not-so-gentle Giants have their work cut out for them. The Steelers' weakness, like so many pretty white girls, is their back end. Their strength is their defensive line. Cameron Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, Arthur Moats, and James Harrison form a line of guys who can stop the run and put pressure on opposing quarterbacks without blitzing. The Broncos' goal will be to run the ball, but this will not be an easy task, and the reason the Steelers won the last matchup is because these guys shut down the offense in the second half. I also think Ryan Shazier is coming off a great performance against the Bengals at the linebacker position. Jarvis Jones on the right side has struggled the last couple games against the run, but all of the Steelers linebackers, including you, me, and Bud Dupree, and Lawrence Timmons, have a knack for pass rushing. Pittsburgh has the advantage here with half point. Steelers offensive line versus Broncos front 7. Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown get all of the credit for the success of this powerful offense, but the reason they are great is because they have a very good O-line protecting them. Von Miller missed practice time this week because his tummy battled some rancid mozzarella sticks. Miller's play against right tackle Marcus Gilbert will be essential to a victory. Whether it's Big Ben or Landry Jones, this defensive front 7 needs to be relentless in their attack. DeMarcus Ware and Shaq Barrett have a favorable matchup against left tackle Alejandro Villanova. Denver needs Ware or Miller and the combo of Wolf, Jackson, and Williams to bring consistent pressure without blitzing. Now you might think it's in the Broncos' best interest to heavily blitz the injured Roethlisberger, but his best friend on Sunday will be short, quick throws. And if a defense is over pursuing, bringing too much pressure, that's a recipe for short passes to be turned into huge gains. Brandon Marshall is as healthy as he can be, and Danny Trevathan will be ready to stop the run. But I'm calling this battle a wash only because Denver did not dominate in the last matchup. 0 points. And now is the time for this defensive front 7 to prove it can dominate any offensive line for the remainder of the playoffs, starting with Pittsburgh. Steelers receivers and tight ends versus Broncos secondary. The best receiver in the NFL will not be on the field Sunday. Antonio Brown has officially been ruled out due to his concussion.
Pain don't hurt.
The reason Brown is a lethal football weapon is because once the ball is in his hands, he uses the entire field in front of him, to the sides of him, and behind him to make attempting tacklers whiff. Not only is Pittsburgh down a man, TJ Ward and Darian Stewart, who did not play in the last matchup, will be back on the field. Denver's secondary cannot relax. Martavis Bryant, Markus Wheaton, and even the rock-solid Heath Miller are a talented group of ball grabbers. We know Bryant, in addition to stretching the field, can catch anything thrown his way. Chris Harris's shoulder is still a bit banged up, and Darian Stewart's hamstring won't be 100%. But without Brown, the Broncos deserve their half point. Special teams versus special teams. Over the past 7 games, Brandon McManus is 10 of 14 on field goal attempts. And the Steelers' Chris Boswell is 19 of 21 in that same time period, including a game winner against the Bengals. Antonio Brown will not be returning punts this weekend. And the Broncos may get Omar Bolden back in their punt return game, which could provide a spark that Denver needs. But with Boswell having the better leg right now, I'm giving Pittsburgh a .25 advantage. The final score is 1.75 Broncos to 1.25 Steelers. It's the playoffs, so these scores are going to be close. The nice thing is the Broncos have the bigger X factor in determining points with the return of Peyton Manning. Right now, I truly believe that Denver has the best chance of any AFC team to make it to the Super Bowl. And yes, a big part of that is because they are getting a banged up Steelers team this weekend. This is an opportunity they cannot squander, and it is time for them to come together and play complete football. I also believe that if Peyton Manning is feeling as healthy as he says he is, this offense will be the best we've seen all season long. Peyton can compensate for spotty play on the edges of the O-line as long as the backs behind him and the guys he throws to perform. There must be consistent play from Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. If the Broncos beat Pittsburgh, Sanders and Thomas will be the most dangerous receiving duo left in the tournament. I have to believe Peyton is going to play his ass off because he knows in his gut this may be his last playoff opportunity. Demaryius Thomas's mom may be at the game getting to watch him play live for the first time. I expect a huge day from Manning and Demaryius Thomas, and I will predict a 31-20 Broncos playoff win. Thanks for watching the Denver Broncos show by Brendan Perna called That's Good Broncos. Thanks for watching That's Good Broncos player prediction episode. Subscribe here. Give me a follow on Twitter at Brandon Perna. Check out the Mile High Huddle podcast, In the Huddle. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Our guest this week is none other than former Broncos safety Nick Ferguson and the Pittsburgh Steelers guru Jim Wexell. It's a must-listen episode. Check it out now, please.